On a crisp Tuesday morning, November 11, 2024, the arrivals hall at Birmingham Airport appeared to be functioning with its usual chaotic efficiency. It was just past 10:00 a.m., and the terminal was a sea of weary travelers, collecting luggage and reuniting with loved ones. Yet, beneath this veneer of routine transit, the invisible currents of three distinct criminal narratives were about to converge. These were not random events, but the culmination of calculated risks taken by individuals who believed they could outsmart the system. Among them was a mother who had entangled her own children in a high-stakes conspiracy, a careless dealer whose arrogance would be his undoing, and a courier who placed his faith in remote instructions. But to understand the gravity of what transpired that morning, we must first look at the woman standing at the center of the storm, Farzana Cowzer. To the casual observer, 54-year-old Farzana Cowzer from Bradford was the picture of domestic normalcy. A grandmother and a mother, she projected the image of a woman devoted to her household duties. However, investigators would later peel back this layer of respectability to reveal a startling truth. Cowzer was the strategic architect of an international logistics network moving millions of pounds worth of illicit substances from Mexico into the United Kingdom. She was not merely a participant, she was the linchpin. Working in tandem with a shadowy figure known only as Uncle in Pakistan, Cowzer had constructed a pipeline that turned her family unit into a criminal enterprise. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of her operation was the personnel she chose to employ. Unlike traditional syndicate leaders who insulate their families from their illicit activities, Cowzer actively recruited her own children. Her eldest, 33-year-old June Shafaq, served as her lieutenant, while others, including 28-year-old Mohammed Amish Shafaq and 22-year-old Ume Mohammed, were positioned as couriers on the front lines. The manipulation extended even to the youngest, Hamza, who was merely 17 when he was drawn into the fold, his future compromised before he reached adulthood. She even enlisted her daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussein, and a family friend, proving that loyalty to Cowzer came with a heavy price tag. The genius of their operation lay not in concealment, but in misdirection. The syndicate utilized a sophisticated luggage swap technique designed to exploit the airport's own infrastructure. The plan was meticulous. Family members would book legitimate short-haul flights to destinations like Dublin or Amsterdam, traveling light. Crucially, their return to Birmingham was timed to coincide perfectly with the arrival of a long-haul flight from Cancun, Mexico. Inside the baggage hall, the streams of passengers would merge. While unsuspecting travelers waited for their bags, Cowzer's team would locate specific suitcases that had been checked in from Mexico by a corrupt insider, suitcases laden with high-purity contraband. In a fluid, practiced motion, the family members would simply lift these unaccompanied bags from the carousel and walk them through customs as if they were their own luggage from the European trip. It was a strategy that relied on confidence and the appearance of innocence. They didn't need hidden compartments. They just needed to look like tired tourists returning home. For months, this method worked seamlessly, turning the airport into a revolving door for narcotics. But on this particular Tuesday, the pattern had finally been recognized. High above the terminal floor, security teams were watching, and the trap was already set. On that decisive morning, the surveillance teams from the National Crime Agency and Airport Security maintained a disciplined silence. They had identified the group's travel patterns weeks prior, noting how their movements mirrored the arrival of the transatlantic flights. As the passengers from Cancun filtered into the baggage claim area, the surveillance cameras captured the Cowzer group, positioning themselves with practiced casualness near the carousel. To the untrained eye, they were simply tired travelers waiting for their belongings. In reality, they were waiting for 6 suitcases that had been planted on the flight by their overseas connection luggage that contained no personal effects, but a fortune in illicit cargo. The group executed the plan with their usual precision. They lifted the heavy cases from the belt, merged back into the flow of legitimate passengers, and wheeled the trolleys through the nothing-to-declare channel. They exited the terminal and made their way into the fresh air of the forecourt, believing they had once again successfully navigated the gauntlet of border control. The illusion of success held until they reached the airport car park. As they began to load the suitcases into waiting vehicles, the trap snapped shut. Officers swarmed the area, surrounding the 6 suspects and securing the luggage before the vehicles could start their engines. When investigators opened the seized suitcases, the scale of the operation became undeniable. Inside, they found 180 kilograms of cocaine, compressed into blocks and wrapped for distribution. The sheer volume was staggering. Experts estimated the wholesale value at £5 million, with a potential street value reaching over $14 million once the product was diluted and sold. In a single moment, the family's empire, built on the exploitation of international travel routes, had been dismantled. But while the Cowzer case was defined by its complexity and scale, the airport has also been the setting for downfalls triggered by the exact opposite, sheer carelessness. To understand this contrast, we must look back to February 2016. The setting was the same Birmingham airport, but the context was a departure gate. Majid Hussain, a man who appeared to be just another passenger preparing for a flight to Pakistan, approached the security checkpoint. He placed his hand luggage on the belt for the X-ray scanner, seemingly unconcerned. However, the routine scan flagged an anomaly. When security staff searched his bag, they didn't find a concealed compartment or an elaborate disguise. Instead, sitting plainly inside his carry-on was a wrap of heroin. The discovery was baffling in its simplicity. Investigators were left to wonder how someone involved in the narcotics trade could make such a fundamental error. Had he become so arrogant that he believed he was above scrutiny? Or was it a genuine lapse in judgment, a moment of forgetfulness that would cost him his freedom? Regardless of the reason, that single, small package was the loose thread that threatened to unravel his entire life. Hussain was detained immediately, but law enforcement quickly suspected that a man traveling with Class A substances in his carry-on was likely not just a casual user. They suspected the airport interception was merely a glimpse into a much darker reality. Acting on these instincts, authorities pivoted their attention from the terminal to Hussain's residence in Saltley, unaware that they were about to uncover a fortress of criminality that far exceeded their expectations. When the National Crime Agency teams arrived at Majid Hussain's residence on Nansen Road, they were prepared for a standard search. What they found, however, was a professional-grade distribution hub. The investigation quickly moved to the primary bedroom, where the true nature of Hussain's lifestyle was hidden beneath the furniture. Tucked away under his bed was a suitcase that mirrored the one found at the airport, but its contents were far more substantial. Inside were 5 kilograms of high-grade narcotic zone of heroin, and 4 of cocaine, with an estimated street value of £250,000. This discovery confirmed that the slip-up at the security gate wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a massive, ongoing operation. As the search continued, the environment shifted from a drug warehouse to a paramilitary arsenal. Investigators uncovered a collection of hardware that painted Hussain as a man prepared for extreme conflict. The most alarming find was a semi-automatic handgun, fully functional and accompanied by 27 rounds of live ammunition. This wasn't for show. It was a lethal tool for enforcing order in a violent industry. Alongside the firearm, they discovered a stun gun ingeniously designed to look like a standard mobile phone, a deceptive device intended to neutralize threats without alerting bystanders. They also recovered an air pistol, further illustrating Hussain's obsession with weaponry. The final piece of the puzzle was the discovery of $300,000 in physical currency stashed throughout the house. The sight of those tightly bundled notes served as a grim testament to the profit Hussain had extracted from his community. To the authorities, this wasn't just evidence of a crime. It was proof of the extensive damage he had likely caused through his distribution network. However, while Hussain's downfall was triggered by a lapse in his own focus, other criminals were being dismantled through the digital footprints they left behind. In November 2021, the focus shifted to 35-year-old Mohammed Uzair Rashid. Arriving from Pakistan via Dubai, Rashid moved through the terminal with an almost eerie level of composure. He looked exactly like a man returning from a long family visit. Yet a secondary inspection of his checked baggage revealed nearly 18 kilograms of exceptionally high-purity heroin. The street value was nearly £1 million, yet Rashid's face remained a mask of denial. He claimed the bags weren't his, and when that failed, he insisted the packages were planted. The breakthrough came when experts accessed his mobile phone. They found a series of encrypted messages with a contact saved as brother, a handler directing Rashid's every move from Pakistan. As Rashid stood in the security line, heart pounding despite his calm exterior, brother sent a message of reassurance: remain tension-free. God will be generous. This wasn't a spiritual blessing. It was a tactical instruction to maintain the traveler persona. These messages proved that Rashid wasn't a lone actor, but a remote-controlled asset in a global supply chain. This digital leash provided the NCUA with a rare look at the psychological manipulation used by overseas syndicates to move their products across borders, leading to a day of reckoning in the courts. The legal reckoning for these individuals served as a stark reminder that the high-stakes gamble of international trafficking carries a heavy price. For Mohammed Uzar Rashid, the digital evidence was insurmountable. By May 2022, he stood before a judge and admitted to his role in the importation plot. The court, recognizing the massive quantity of high-purity substances he attempted to introduce into the country, handed down a 9-year prison sentence. His tension-free journey had ended in a long-term loss of liberty, proving that no amount of remote encouragement can shield a courier from the weight of the law. The consequences for Majid Hussain were even more severe. When his case reached the Birmingham Crown Court in August 2016, the prosecution presented a devastating narrative of a man who combined high-level distribution with a lethal arsenal. Judge Patrick Thomas QC was blunt in his assessment, describing the marriage of firearms and narcotics as a toxic combination that posed a profound threat to the public. Hussain was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Yet, the authorities were not finished. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, investigators pursued his financial assets with the same vigor they used to find his hidden suitcase. In 2017, he was ordered to repay nearly $300,000 or face an additional 3 years of incarceration, ensuring that he would not profit from the misery he had helped facilitate. Finally, the spotlight returned to the Cowzer family, whose systematic exploitation of airport logistics had finally reached its conclusion. In late 2024, the Bradford matriarch and her syndicate stood to hear their fate. Farzana Kauser, the architect of the family enterprise, was sentenced to 13 years and 4 months. The tragedy of her leadership was reflected in the sentences of her children. Her eldest son, Jund, received 10 years and 9 months, while his brothers Mohammed Amis and Ume were given 8 years and 9 months and 8 years and 1 month, respectively. Even the youngest members were not spared. Safar Kauser was jailed for over 7 years. The daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussain, received a 2-year suspended sentence, while the family friend, Khalid Abdul Kawi, was ordered to serve over 10 years. This single family, once a tight-knit unit, was effectively erased from society, their lineage fractured by a mother's ambition. These cases highlight a sobering reality. While the methods of moving illicit cargo may become more sophisticated, the vigilance of those watching the borders remains constant. The allure of fast wealth through the corridors of Birmingham Airport ultimately led these individuals to a much darker destination. What are your thoughts on these sentences? Was the matriarch's influence a factor that deserved more or less severity? Let us know in the comments. If you found this investigative breakdown informative, make sure to like and subscribe to stay updated on our next deep dive into the UK's most complex cases.